The 365 Pro Wrestling.
365 Nation, my guest today is none other than Thomas Chow. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm really happy you came on today. You are a ring announcer, and you've been doing it for how many years now?
This year should be about 6. I think 6 years.
That's pretty crazy, man. Now, first off, thoughts on WrestleMania?
You know what? I was very hestant in how I thought, like going into how it was going to be. But you know what? I think it was, for the circumstance, it was pretty good. I enjoyed pretty much all of it.
Yeah, see, I was really pleasantly surprised as well, because I went in going, this might be the worst Mania ever. And they wrestled so hard. It was really good. And they had the unique matches with Taker and AJ, and then Cena and Wyatt. So it was quite an interesting show, to say the least.
Definitely. The AJ Styles and Undertaker match. I wasn't quite sure what to expect, because I thought, okay, it's gonna be out there. It's gonna be in a different setting. So I was happy about that. I just didn't realize they were gonna go in with that way, and I think I was smiling all throughout both matches.
For sure, I was pleasantly surprised. Like I said, it was just wow, and it was exciting and different. And I'm wondering, like, what if they did a Raw like that, a whole Raw? I know it'd be probably too much, but like, even if it was a movie or a special, it'd be kind of interesting to see them put something like that together.
I think in this, especially with the way things are working now, it's the perfect time to do it, because they're working in such a limited capacity with the crew that they've got. I think now would be the best time to flex those creative muscles. As Vince says, he likes to make movies. It's the perfect time.
Nice, I like that. Well, let's talk about how you first got into pro wrestling. Like, when you were a young Chownado, how'd you get into this?
So, I've been watching wrestling since I was 6. It was as my mother says, it was my grandparents' fault. I think we've all been there. It's either a grandparent or a dad or a really cool uncle that you just sit down, you start watching. But for me, it was SummerSlam 1990. That was my first pay-per-view that I ever watched, and I was hooked right away.
What got you into it? Was it the wrestling, the characters, just it being totally different than anything else you'd seen on TV?
I think because it was the 90s, and very much how it was all larger than life. And I liked action movies, and I liked superheroes. That was one of the biggest things. They were real life, over the top superheroes, and it drew me there. And then I started to like more of the actual, like, the nuts and bolts of it all, not just like the spectacle. And like I say, it's I got hooked like instant.
That's amazing. Who were your favorites growing up?
So right away I gravitated towards Bret Hart, and at first it was just because he was Canadian, and so you're always rooting for the hometown. And then as I started watching more, even though he's a bad guy, I loved Mr. Perfect. Macho Man was always a favorite of mine, and then Piper, Dusty, a lot of the big characters, but those were pretty much my. Actually, even the Texas Tornado, for as short of a time he was there, just because, like I said, that time period is when I started watching. Demolition, even though they were bad guys at the time, definitely my favorite there.
Those are all some classic wrestlers, like some amazing wrestlers who I really enjoyed as well. Now, did you continue to love wrestling until today, or did you fall out of love with it for a while, or just forget it? Because wrestling wasn't always the most popular. It's had its up and downs. Like, how have you been as a fan?
There was a lot of times where I couldn't watch it, but I always kept an eye on it through whether it was renting pay-per-views, whether it was going to the theaters to watch wrestling. Like, there was a time around 2004, I didn't have TV. I was kind of too broke to pay for it, really. So, they always have WrestleMania or a lot of the pay-per-views at the theater, and so I would go and watch them. But I've never really fallen out. I've always been, in my circle of friends, the wrestling guy, and so thankfully I haven't been in that situation. I've always found that no matter what the era was, there was always something that I liked, whether it's a person, whether it's just because I've always been watching, or a different company that just kept me still hooked to it.
Speaking of different companies, who interests you when you're throughout your time of being a fan?
Just for company wise, or
which promotions do you like to watch? Were you a WCW guy for a while? Do you like New Japan? What do you like to watch?
So aside from WWE, because that's pretty much I think what all of us watched back then for the most part, is WCW was always fascinating to me because I remember watching it when I was younger, and it was Saturday night, or it was Power Hour or something like that, and Rick Rude was on it. And I'm like, wait a minute. He was with WWF, and now you're with this other company, and so he kind of got me hooked into being aware of WCW, and so I watched a lot of WCW. We got lucky during the whole Monday Night War with the fact that we didn't have to fight to watch WCW or WWE on Monday, because we could just watch both of them one after the other on Tuesday, so that was nice. New Japan, I've kept an eye on, but I haven't had a chance to really watch a lot of their stuff. So I would love to watch more New Japan. Ring of Honors, some of their stuff. I'm always aware of the other promotions. It's just whether or not I have the time to sit down and watch something aside from little bits and pieces. Is a different thing altogether.
And with so much wrestling going on nowadays, so much content, it's hard to watch everything. You'd be stuck to your TV 24/7 if you did, or your computer. But now, becoming a fan, watching, growing up with it, and then becoming the ring announcer, how did that happen?
So I was working in my just day-to-day job, and I worked with BJ Laredo and Crofton. And ECCW was coming into town, and they BJ and Crofton knew that I was I'd gone to broadcasting school, and so I was approached. Hey, do you want to do the show? I said sure. I said awesome. Yeah, no, of course. And so I did that, and then when VIPW started up, I was there, and being I think the only not real, but being the only announcer on the island, it was kind of well, here you go.
Well, I think you've earned it too. You've worked really hard to do it, and you're always working hard, getting everything over to the fans and talking to the fans. You're the first people they see. You engage them at the beginning, and you're really good at that. So tell us some of your favorite times you've ring announced. Has in VIPW, you've done a couple PWA shows. You did the ECCW show. What have been some moments for you?
I think as I've started to get more and more comfortable, because there was a time where even though I'm doing it because I'm the only person, it's harder for me to kind of evolve myself because I'm the only person around to do it. I'll take criticism, and I'll take any help I can get to improve myself. So for favorite times, one is when I started doing for the anniversary shows. I started doing just because I'm a wrestling fan. I just started doing interesting openings, to get the crowd amped up. I think one of the more interesting times was there's a lot. I'm just trying to think about. I think actually one of the big things is getting a chance to work with some of the people who now have gone on to other promotions and other things. Also, hey, I remember that person, or hey, and it's cool to see where they've all gone, and being able to announce these people to the ring. I think that's been one of my all-time favorites. It's kind of hard to pinpoint everything down because it tends to be a blur sometimes, and so it's an overall feeling.
I was gonna say it's a loaded question. There's been so many moments. It seems. Seeing people move on and get bigger and do things. Do you feel like you'd like to work for other companies, like on the mainland or maybe even further? Like, what are your goals? Or are you very happy being like the ring announcer in Vancouver Island?
I'm definitely very happy. I would definitely like to see things on the island evolve. I'm not sure to where. I always want to be very much entrenched. I would like to kind of extend out and see how I would do things in other areas and maybe other promotions. I just don't know how I would work out because I mean, as an announcer, especially in all these other areas and other promotions, they've got their guys, and so for me to come over, it would have to be in probably like a different capacity, and so that which would be cool. I just don't know how that would ever really work.
For sure. It's got to be hard. There's only one spot on the card for a ring announcer, so like you said, maybe you'd have to get into managing or a backstage manager or interviewer role or something like that. But do you still get nervous? Like, is VIPW had Shaw TV tapings going on all the time, and you're there with the mic and you have to get interviews with these guys. Was that nerve-wracking, or how was that for you?
It still is. And I think that's the good thing. When I'm concerned about what I'm doing and how I'm going to present this, and remembering some of the stuff that I need to do, because I found that there are times where I'm not as nervous anymore, and then that's when that's when I've really sucked, and it hasn't been that good. I've taken things too easy or too lax about what I'm doing, and so it's hurt what I'm doing. So thankfully, I still do get nervous, which is a good thing, I think.
I agree. I think you always want to have a little bit of nerves because that means you got feelings in going into that matchup or ring announcing or whatnot. Now, have you ever made a crazy mistake, like called somebody by the wrong name? Like in when we wrestle, if I screw up a move, it can sometimes be covered up, but it's got to be harder being there in the middle of the ring with that microphone in your hands.
Yes, a couple of situations. I've actually mispronounced. I think it was a match in PWA, and I didn't even realize. I got it until I came back. I think it was like Judas Icarus and Daniel Makabe. I probably even just mispronounced his name right now. But I came back and it's like you mispronounced your names, and I'm like, what? Like, yeah, it's this. I'm like, oh geez. Actually, the biggest one, and I'm gonna outright apologize. Is Rhea Von Slasher. I actually have been mispronouncing her name for like years, up until like I think the last 3 years. Man. And sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say you're not the only one. A lot of people do that with her.
Yeah, and she's been nice about not like telling me. I kind of wish she did, but you know what? It's like when I found like, oh geez, I've been this entire time, but it's something you grow on, and as as a joke, and say, oh well, hey, it's like, be careful, I will mispronounce the out of your name,
No, it's funny though. But now with everything you've done all over these years, doing the main events, like I see, like you really put everything into that. Is that special because it's the main event? Is that special because we remember WCW and Michael Buffer? Like, what's about the main event that brings out the best in Thomas Chow?
From an ego standpoint, everyone's kind of paying attention to me, so I want to make sure that I give out the best, the best intro and the best presentation that I can give, because when I say, it is now time for your main event, I want to put the punctuation that, it's going to be an amazing match, no matter what type of match it is. So, I want to put like everything into it because it's the last match, it's the main event, and you've had an amazing show throughout the entire night, but now you're in for something even more special.
Amazing. Now, stepping a little bit aside from wrestling, you're huge into comics still and video games and all that. Can you tell our fans like what that world means to you?
So, in my in the whole world of Thomas Chow, it pretty much goes wrestling, video games, comics, and then music. For comics, I've been reading them since about the same time I got into wrestling. It kind of went hand in hand. My family owned a convenience store, and so there was comics there, and I was always reading from a very young age. Funny fact, when I first got glasses, I was so upset because they put the eye drops in, and my eyes were all blurry, and I couldn't read comics for like a few hours.
Man, no, that'd be terrible.
And then with video games, once again, like I said, everything all happened all at the same time. It's kind of funny, and I think it's the same with a lot of people's hobbies that they've held on to for a lot, is that they all start around the same time. But when I was young, we got a Nintendo for the for Christmas, and I mean, I didn't play like a lot because I was still fairly young, but I was always watch my mom and my uncle and the rest of my family play, and then I got more and more into it, and now it's one of my all-time favorite hobbies.
100%. Now, you talked about music. What's your music? What's number one on your playlist?
It gravitates, like it really not gravitates. It moves about. I very much am a big 80s music guy, so like 80s pop, 80s rock, 80s hair metal, stuff like that. I always say that, I mean, even 80s rap. I sometimes say that I was born, or I grew up in the wrong decade. Like if I was born in the 70s, the 80s would have been a much interesting time. But it's gonna. But I listen to metal. Metal, which a lot of people, when they look at me, they're like, really? And I say, well, yeah, it's but for music wise, I grew up with Bare Naked Ladies, once in Canadian stuff, and I gravitated towards one of my favorite bands is Blind Guardian, like a German fantasy metal band, which
Nice.
kind of moves everything into that the cross. The cross love there.
For sure. I was going to say that kind of ties it all together in a way.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of kind of like groups, and in wrestling, there's certain groups, people hang out with each other. Everyone hangs out with everybody via PW or 365, but you also have a very special group with yourself and Jay. Sometimes you got Adam in there. You used to have Zach in there. How's it been? And Dylan, I guess, as well. How's that been, like having that little crew together?
It's been great because we're always in the same area, and we're always experiencing the show from the same vantage point, and we're able to talk while we're watching and doing the show. It's been very nice. It's been very great because we all know what we were looking at.
Do you guys ever, like, I think was it you and Jay, or maybe you and Zach, commentate to yourselves while the matches are happening?
That is correct. Yes,
that was it. I knew it was something like that, because we've seen it before, and I'm like, what are they doing? And then someone told me you guys like commentated the matches together. Now, would that be something you'd like to do in the future for VIPW, or for if 365 gets something going like that? Would you like to be a commentator?
I would. I always, because I've been trying to experiment on my own with commentating. It's definitely a different skill set. I really give big props and big respect to Jay and to Dirty Dave when they would commentate for the Shaw tapings, Ocho and CP, when they would do the PWA show tapings and all that, because it's one thing to be an announcer and because it's very straightforward. Announcing, you know what you're going to say, you know how you're going to present it. You can deviate, but it all comes back. commentating, you're interacting with someone else, and it's very much you're getting your point across, but you're also playing off the other person. My biggest fear with commentating is I just spend the entire time trying to, like if it was VIPW, just spend the entire time trying to make Jay laugh.
Man, does he ever try and get you to laugh or crack up when you're announcing? Or do any wrestlers ever try and mess with you when you're announcing?
It's usually after the fact. Like I'll announce them and they'll mess with me a bit. I don't think I've ever had anyone I'm actually physically announcing. It's usually during their entrances. They'll do something or they'll say something, and I'm trying not to laugh. You can probably kind of see me kind of turn a bit, or I'll turn to Tim, and it looks like I'm talking to him about something, but I'm trying not to laugh because a lot of these guys, even when they're being like super serious, super outrageous, they'll say or do something, and I'm trying not to laugh, and a lot of times I'm not succeeding.
Amazing, man. Well, I want to thank you for being on here today, and I was wondering, would you give the fans your social media so they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Chownado, Thomas Chow at Chownado. I'm on Instagram as Chownado. Pretty much most things that you can find me on social media are going to be Chownado of some sort. Facebook, I am working on a Thomas Chow site. That's it's going very slowly because I want to steer people to that as opposed to my personal one. So for the meantime, the Twitter, Instagram is my main one. Facebook, I'll be able to do that in a later time.
Perfect, man. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to get with you again later in this 365 year, talk about more wrestling, and maybe see where you progress and if you are commentating, or see what's happening in the future.
Definitely. I very much enjoy this, and I'm hoping that the 365 audience is going to enjoy this. And thank you very much for having me on. It was super fun and a pleasure, and I will do this anytime you ask me.
Thank you so much, man. We'll talk again soon.
Alrighty, take care.